Welcome to Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape Podcast. Hosted by Dr. Holly Krutka, Executive Director of the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming. The show highlights SER's role supporting our mission to promote energy-driven economic development for the state of Wyoming.
Welcome back, listeners. Today we have a very special guest. Representative Burkhart has served in the Wyoming legislature since 2011, and he's currently chairman of the House Minerals Business and Economic Development Committee. He's also a member of the School of Energy Resources Governance Board, the Energy Resources Council. He also serves on the Enhanced Oil Recovery Commission, and he serves on the Energy Council, which, if you're not familiar with the Energy Council, it is an organization made up of state lawmakers from energy states. In this episode, we'll hear from Representative Don Burkhart on his career and his time as a Wyoming legislator. Representative Burkhart, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome. You started your career in the energy sector long before you were involved in the Wyoming legislature. So let's start there. Tell us about your career.
Thank you, Holly, for having me. And yes, I did start in the energy sector way before I started serving in the legislature. And that in my time in energy industries, energy-related industries, probably goes back into the 1970s. I've always had an interest in energy, minerals, those sorts of things, and I brought that to me with my service in the legislature, although that wasn't the reason I ran for the legislature. Years ago, I heard a speech by a legislator who indicated that he felt the state's budget was out of control and didn't know what to do about it. My reaction was, you're on the Appropriations Committee. What do you mean you don't know what to do about it? So I just ran. It wasn't a bucket list thing. It was something I felt I might be able to add some usefulness to it and some good work for the people of Wyoming.
So let's talk about your career in the legislature in a minute, but first let's get back to that energy sector career. So what was your first job in the energy sector?
It was working for FMC Corporation in their underground mining equipment division.
And where was that?
West Virginia.
Got it.
And then from there I went to work at the Nevada test site where the United States at that time tested nuclear weapons. And it was a kind of a good match from previous employment to desires to work in a field like that. A great job, probably the most fun I've ever had in a job. And it might sound funny, but it was an opportunity to do many, many different things and learn a lot of stuff that you'd have no opportunity to learn anywhere else. From there, went back to work in the energy industry here in Wyoming.
Who'd you work for here?
Here I worked for NERCO, which at the time was a division of Pacific Power. And then with the economic situation in Wyoming at the time, went back to work in the nuclear weapons industry as safety manager at the Rocky Flats Nuclear Weapons Production Plant.
And that was in Colorado?
In Colorado, right outside of Boulder. And then when the opportunity came back to Wyoming, we did come back. The family wanted to come back. And so we returned to Wyoming and have been here ever since. I went to work for Amoco in one of their producing oil fields, then transferred over to Wamsutter to a natural gas field, and ultimately, after merger between Amoco and BP, retired from BP about 10 years ago.
So you've represented House District for about 14 years. So tell us first about your district, your constituents. Who do you represent?
So House District 15 is actually an energy district. You have what ultimately will be one of the largest wind farms in the world.
And that's Chokecherry.
Sierra Madre, yep. Yes, Molly. It has also been a center for uranium mining, which thank goodness is coming back. It was a center for coal mining in the Hanna area. It is one of the largest producing gas fields in the country. So it all centers right around Rawlins, right around the district. And with redistricting, the district has changed a little bit, but it's still pretty much energy and agricultural based.
And of course you have a refinery right there.
And the refinery, yes. One of the best refineries in the country. They're looking at expanding that refinery. And most people don't realize that regardless of the brand of gasoline you buy or diesel fuel, 40% of what's sold in Wyoming comes from that refinery, and they just recently celebrated their 100th anniversary.
I saw that. That's really great. And definitely they also process Wyoming crude. So it's not just your gasoline doesn't just come from the refinery, but the refinery's input comes from the state of Wyoming, at least some of it.
Yes, it does. Still from the Beryl area where I worked. That field in Beryl goes back to the early 1900s. It was there before the refinery. One reason to put the refinery there, they had access to water on the North Platte River and access to the crude oil coming from the Beryl area and the wells that used to be there. And in fact, the Beryl field's still producing today. A very prolific field that's been there for over 100 years. And that can't produce everything the refinery needs. They take oil from other places, but they can handle heavy crude oil, which is high in hydrogen sulfide content. So makes them a unique refinery, great corporate partners to the community. Hope to see them there another 100 years.
Yeah. And it's really important that we have domestic refining in the U.S. We need it. So grateful that they're right down the road from us. So back to your time in the legislature. Like you said, you are from an energy community and you have a lot of expertise in energy. And we're going to talk about some of that later. But your interest in running for the legislature was more broad. So tell us about your early days when you were first getting into the legislature and some of the mentors you had when you were first elected.
So the early days were interesting. Like I said, the legislature was not something I wanted to do. It wasn't on a bucket list. It was something I felt I needed to do for the people. I wasn't happy with the representation they had at the time and the way things were going, so ran, ultimately won. First election won by 11 votes.
Wow.
And that, which is interesting, that was the first time I'd ever run for anything in any way, shape, or form. I wasn't a high school class officer or anything else. So that was
no student council?
Nope.
Okay.
That was an eye-opener. I would say my first term was kind of fraught with some indecision. This was something...
By you?
Yes. Something very different that I had done. Having a technical background, my mind kind of works logically and in a sequence, and that is not the way the legislature works. So it was kind of some growing pains to get into that mode. Actually, at one point, thought of resigning. Was talked out of that by Tom Lubnow, who was a great mentor to me, and that by him showing me his letter of resignation after he had started to serve, and he convinced me to stick with it.
But he did not.
He did not resign either.
He didn't turn it in.
No,
he just wrote
not.
it.
He just wrote it, but kept it as a memento. I hadn't gone that far. So convinced me to stay, to kind of get a little bit different way of thinking about things, and then just subsequently ran again and then again, and now I'm in my 7th term. So, and then it was an opportunity to bring my knowledge of the minerals industry, energy industries to the legislature to address some of those issues, which since I've started serving have become more major for the state. We've had to take some state action on how we enhance our minerals industry, enhance our energy industry, and address issues that actually weren't even on the table when I ran for the first time. They were still in the planning stages, which have since developed into other things.
So during your time in the legislature, how did you determine what would be a priority for you and how to draft legislation on that?
My priorities generally were what the legislation would do to or for my constituents. Would it impact them negatively, positively, and tried to push those that would impact them positively, and the state also. Could we make changes that made life better for the people, provided jobs, provided income for the state, all in one fell swoop? And I've had a variety of legislation. All my legislation has not been energy related or minerals related. In fact, one that I'm relatively proud of is that a very small change, one line in the banking regulations, allows the small banks in Wyoming to have the capability now of loaning money for mortgages, home improvements, and that in their own community. And that has been a tremendous opportunity for those small banks and the people, that they don't have to go out of town for a mortgage. They can get a mortgage from their local bank, and the banks now have that capability to do that. which I think is important to keep things local, the banks, the businesses local, and I'd sure rather stop in and talk to my local banker than I would talking by chat mail to somebody 10 states away.
Chat mail? Otherwise known as email?
Well, no, the little chat box.
Oh, the chat box. Okay, gotcha. The robot. You're talking to a robot most likely these days.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think a lot of us in Wyoming are beneficiaries of that kind of work and quite frankly had no idea that it was ever not like that. So, of course, my mortgage here in Laramie is with a local bank. And so thank you for doing that, because the other thing is our local banks are part of our community and they give back. So it's a positive cycle.
It is, Holly. And I might not really, maybe I shouldn't, but every time I see a sign up in a yard that says this remodel or this house addition provided by a loan from the local bank, I just feel a lot of pride in that. We keep that money local, we keep the businesses local, and that I could have a hand in helping them do that.
That's great.
And like I said, not related to energy in any way, but a real positive, I think, for all the people in Wyoming, not just my district.
Well, you have a lot to be proud of related to energy, too. So let's talk about some of that. So you've done a lot of work in the legislature around energy development, policy support for different research around the state and for the state. You were talking earlier today, I heard you talk about a $1 million kind of initial research fund. Do you want to talk about that and what you think has resulted from it?
Sure. In my first term, you come into the legislature not knowing a lot of stuff. I'd never dealt much with anybody in elected office and that. So you come in and you have people there who have been there for years and have a reputation and that. And I could see an opportunity to do a few things that the state hadn't been doing to increase our research, to increase the technical end of Wyoming. And we had, believe it or not, extra money at the time, and there was a little bit of money set aside during the budget process to let legislators come up with their own ideas. And everybody was going after a small amount of money, and I think it was oversubscribed by about 7 times what was there. And I looked and thought, well, I know this one legislator has a reputation of being a pretty tough guy to deal with, but he had $5 million set aside. Thought, nobody's going after it. Why not? You go after the big dogs, or you stay on the porch, as the saying goes. So I ended up having $1 million of his money, believe me, he wasn't happy about it, appropriated to certain things I felt would help the state of Wyoming. Out of that $1 million, $200,000 went toward State Geologic Survey. They used that money to prove out additional rare earth deposits, additional mineral deposits, and to start looking at that way. They had used that money to analyze samples that had been taken 20 years before, but they had never had the money to have those samples analyzed for mineral deposits. They had the samples, but no analysis. So $300,000 went to a project here at UW to look at making glass in Wyoming, which is still kind of pending out there. People would like to do it. The real problem with it is transportation. If you make a glass jar and you make a lot of them and ship them somewhere else, you're shipping a lot of open space.
Yeah.
But if you make glass, I think they call it shards, which is just pieces of glass that then are remelted and formed into something and ship it. You can ship it by rail car, and that might be a more viable option. So that's actually still on the thinking stage. Mm-hmm. And then $500,000 went to, at that time, UW's engineering department to look at doing work on rare earths. They used some of the money but didn't produce a lot of results, had a meeting and kind of said, no, you have this money, you'll use it for rare earths. That's the coming thing, and we have great deposits in Wyoming. And ultimately, that money was reassigned through the School of Energy Resources at the time to look at that. And I think that $500,000, last time I looked, I think had generated somewhere over $9 million in matching grants. So obviously, SER has done a great job in taking a relatively small amount of money out of a multi-billion-dollar budget and turning it into work here, research here in Wyoming that's continues to grow. We have another rare earth mine looking at opening up. So that's those things I am proud of, that we're moving that along, and all the things that come with that development, an expenditure of money and that. And I'll move on to a little bit also. Here a few years ago, again, with the Wyoming State Geologic Survey, arranged for them in the budget to get a $50,000 grant. That was it, out of the state budget. The day the budget was signed, they received from the U.S. Geologic Survey $450,000 for a project to match that. They matched it 9-1, and that project has continued to grow to where they have grants coming in now from private companies who want to benefit from their research and want. While that research and the geologic work is open to everyone, what the companies wanted was first look at it before it goes public. I've seen some of that, and I think it'll pay off in the future for Wyoming's continued mineral development.
It does, and you read a lot that Wyoming has made a lot of progress on rare earths and other critical minerals. We certainly have now grown our portfolio of work here at the School of Energy Resources, and we've been applying for even more competitive projects. I will say we are also, I don't know what happened in that original project, but we have great partnership from the College of Engineering and Physical Sciences now, and we're actually going to be hiring 2 tenure track faculty members in the chemical engineering department that can help us build our capacity to educate students and to do Wyoming specific work. So there's a lot going on in this space, but it's sometimes you just need a little bit of foundational support to get that momentum going. And that's where it's been just really transformational to have the support from the legislature. So,
and with that, Holly, one thing there, the engineering department was not expecting that money.
Yeah.
I kind of caught them cold and said, here's money, you will spend it on this project. And the legislature does that often. And I think they were caught a little off guard that all of a sudden a legislator showed up with a nice amount of money and told them, but you will work on a specific project. I think over time, though, they've realized that rare earths are going to be very necessary, and that the universities that have an expertise in that are going to become in demand.
Sure.
In those areas, like you said, engineering, chemical engineering, mechanical, some of the properties of those materials are tremendous. In fact, they're using some of the isotopes of those for radiation therapy in medical situations. Yeah. So that's an area that is wide open. I think we can benefit from, and it was something I was interested in at the time. So that's what we did. The legislature appropriated the money, directed how it was to be used, and I think that has grown both for the university and the engineering department for SCR. I think has put University of Wyoming's engineering department kind of on the map, as they say, in that area.
And I think it's a great story, and we're still building up that area, but we have so much opportunity now, and I think the whole state of Wyoming is on the map because of that funding and the other work that the legislature's done to make it an investment-friendly state. And another area, is nuclear energy, that the legislature has given really seed funding to the School of Energy Resources, and we're trying to grow that capacity here in the school, but also across the university. And we have some great tenure track faculty. Tara Getty in law, Caleb Hill in chemistry are taking the lead of our Nuclear Energy Research Center, and they're really working with several departments and folks across the university to grow our efforts around nuclear energy. And you've been a leader in Wyoming on nuclear energy related issues for a long time. The state of Wyoming, I think most people know that we are the nation's largest uranium producer. It's been really small production levels for a while, but that's starting to ramp back up. When did your interest in nuclear energy first develop?
Well, Holly, I think I've got to go back many years. I think I was 13, 14 years old at the time and thought that, I'd like to do something with nuclear materials. I wrote to Dr. Glenn Seaborg, who at the time was the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, the predecessor to both the NRC and Department of Energy, and asked if I could have some nuclear material to do some personal research on, and he politely declined, but told me to continue with my interests and wished me luck in the future. And that kind of started it, and I don't know, it seems like I've always been interested in those areas.
Did your parents know you were asking for nuclear material?
Not exactly then. They found out later. I was one of those children parents always wondered about what's he going to do next. So it was just a growing interest. Ultimately led me to get a degree in physics, mainly for some of those reasons, and to work on that, although most of my research when I was in college was in the area of materials engineering and electronics. So it just grew. Working at the Nevada test site, I think, brought that back into focus, and then ultimately working also at the Rocky Flats production facility. And I always saw nuclear power as having a lot of what most scientists would describe as elegance to the way it produces power. So I think it was just natural to move that way. The power density from nuclear is tremendous compared to anything else.
Right.
A small half-inch long, quarter-inch diameter pellet of uranium is equal to about 2 tons of coal in power generation. So that, call it elegance, and that ability to produce large amounts of power with a small amount of material has always attracted me. So, and I think Wyoming was poised because of all the uranium mining we've done to move into that field eventually.
And we have a very energy literate public, and just from the uranium mining background, interest in nuclear across the state, at least according to our polling. So there's a lot happening in Wyoming related to nuclear energy right now. What do you think Wyoming should be doing? I mean, there's a lot underway, but what do you think, and as a summary, we should be doing to pursue bringing nuclear energy opportunities to the state?
Holly, I think we should continue, stay the course, as the saying goes, of we're already doing things, we're already attracting companies, we've already signed memorandums of understanding to look at bringing the manufacturing end of nuclear stuff to Wyoming. Mm-hmm. And that isn't all nuclear. I think if you bring nuclear in, you also kind of raise the bar on all of your other engineering, because the amount of engineering, the quality of the materials, the technical background all gets elevated. So that increases Wyoming's standard everywhere. I was recently at the American Nuclear Society's annual conference, and all the speakers mentioned Wyoming and what we're doing, including Secretary Granholm with the Department of Energy. In fact, a lot of people were asking, what's Wyoming going to do next? The answer they all got was, well, here's what we've done, but we do have our own secrets and method of operation, and what we do next, you'll know about it when you read about it in the paper.
Yeah, we're not going to tell everybody.
We need an advantage over other states. We've put money to nuclear, but we, unlike some states, we are not putting hundreds of millions of dollars to it. The one thing I think that has benefited us is being the size we are, population-wise, and just having one university, we've been able to be very nimble and make decisions very quickly.
Yeah.
We have not studied doing something nuclear. We've just gone and done it, said, hey, here's the direction we need to go. Is it a good idea or not? Made the decisions quickly and moved on with it. And I think it's paying off. We started with a small $2 million allocation to School of Energy Resources. We've increased that. We've added things. That in turn has brought in additional grant money from federal agencies and federal government and others to increase our capabilities. And I think it's interesting, and it shows the quality and that of the research we can do here and the things we can do, that Wyoming does not have a research reactor like a lot of schools does. The university does not have a research reactor, but we can still make use of those that are available other places, such as the Idaho National Lab, and continue with other things. We probably need more mechanical and electrical engineers than we do nuclear engineers anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
And they, in the nuclear field, they get a lot of transferable skills, and I think up the level of knowledge they need to have. So I think it's a good progression.
So I have to give a plug. We are working through the process. It is not yet fully approved, but we're working through the process thanks to funding from the state of Wyoming and the John P. L. Bogan Foundation to create a nuclear energy science certificate, and that's the School of Energy Resources and the College of Engineering and Physical Sciences. And we're really excited about that certificate if we can move forward with it, because it will do exactly what you're saying. It's going to allow folks folks in other disciplines to be really competitive for nuclear energy jobs. And of course, there's two real catalysts for investment and excitement around nuclear energy in Wyoming. One is our uranium industry and the need to have domestic sources of uranium production and enrichment. And then the other area of excitement, of course, that we haven't actually mentioned by name is TerraPower's Natrium facility in Kemmer, Wyoming. It's a first of a kind advanced demonstration reactor. It's really exciting, and the community is behind it. I just saw something today that Lincoln County had issued something saying the community was like a nuclear friendly community, which was really cool. So we have some great building blocks, but I think to your point, we're not just going to stop and watch those things happen. We're going to make sure that we have graduates from UW and the community colleges that are ready to work in this industry, and we're going to look for other opportunities that might provide.
And Holly, I think your example of TerraPower is a good one. In addition to the reactor, TerraPower is also constructing what they call a test and fill facility.
Right.
That is not a nuclear facility. It's a facility where any components to a nuclear reactor TerraPower ever puts to use, which have to be tested before they're installed, will go through that facility. So if they build a nuclear reactor in an eastern state, the components will go through that facility here in Wyoming. And that facility will employ approximately 30 to 60 engineers, scientists, and probably 60 to 100 technicians. And here's a real opportunity to keep Wyoming students who graduate from here, in Wyoming. I hear this a lot. How do we keep our kids in the state? This is how we keep them in the state, providing those things they're interested in. So someone who goes through mechanical engineering has an opportunity to stay in the state, to work in a really high-tech job and meet their goals in life, because no engineer wants to just piddle around. They all want to work in something that is really productive, really cutting edge, and this is an opportunity. And it's not a nuclear facility, and that's part of the reason we've addressed nuclear as much as we have. Is it's an opportunity for all the spin-off industries to be here in Wyoming. We keep the jobs in Wyoming. We keep our kids in Wyoming. So I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, you keep the kids in Wyoming with really good jobs and rewarding jobs, high-paying jobs. And I would say the opportunity is absolutely there for nuclear, and we are going to seize it. But the opportunity around energy innovation is more broad. I like to say, and I like to point out that at the moment, this number is always changing. But right now, over 77% of the folks who work here at the School of Energy Resources are UW graduates, and between a third and half of them are Wyoming natives. And again, they're coming to work on carbon capture and storage, nuclear energy, hydrogen, oil and gas, coal to products, you name it, we work on it. So it's just energy innovation really can create great jobs and bring funds to the state through competitive grants. So, yeah.
And Holly, I agree with you. And you look at the mission of SER for research that produces economic development.
Right.
I think this is a great opportunity. I think SER is on the cusp right now of doing a lot of that with the coal to asphalt program,
sure,
other programs, hydrogen, looking at using our existing coal resources for other uses other than to make steam for electricity generation. I see a lot of that, and we have great opportunities. Those kids can stay. We can bring engineers and people back to Wyoming who want to come back.
And we're doing that too. We have several examples of folks in the building.
And so SER kind of is the tip of the spear on that to show what can be done. And I think one thing we've done too with nuclear and some of the projects is what I call my Edison example. And people think Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. He did not. He invented the long-lasting filament for the light bulb, which was a tremendous improvement. But to do that, he hired a researcher named Crawford and didn't give him all the information. Told him, hey, take tungsten and make a light filament out of tungsten, kind of, and didn't give him one piece of information, which at the time, that was considered impossible. But they succeeded, obviously. We have plenty of lights. We've moved on to LEDs and that sort of thing. But the incandescent bulb came about. We've done kind of the same thing with Wyoming, saying, hey, we know what other people have done, but we're not going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
SER is going to look at other things where we can grow and maybe come up with a much better idea that benefits the whole state.
And an area that is really important for us to be successful and having that broad vision is our governance board, the Energy Resources Council, which you've served in. What did you think being on ERC was going to be like before you were on it?
I don't think I had any real preconceived notions. I thought it was like a lot of committees and subcommittees and boards. You show up and that's about all you do. I would describe the ERC, and I have publicly, so I can say this on this program, as in some ways, that's Wyoming's brain trust. The people on that board are top notch. After I found out the people, I kind of felt it was a little intimidating at times. I think I've kind of opened up to the board, but the board is composed of great people who have the best interest of Wyoming at heart, have the best interest of UW, the School of Energy Resources, and how we move forward with projects and that. It's been a great experience for me. I hope that the rest of the board feels that my participation has been a great experience for them.
We'll ask them later.
Okay.
So what excites you about the future? And also, on the flip side, any challenges you think we should watch out for?
Well, the future, that's a tough one. I think there are things out there that we're going to need to address that we don't even foresee right now.
Oh, that's the whole point. That's why we're here, right?
And that I think some of the research being done at UW may open up a variety of areas that we have yet to consider that may end up producing great results for the state. We've looked at issues on water, hydrogen, some other things. We've done great research in a variety of fields that sometimes you look at that research and you think, well, that was a good project, but what do I do with it? And a year later, you find out that there's a great demand for that research. As you know, both of my sons have master's degrees in engineering from here at UW, and we're thrilled to find out that their master's theses were referenced by companies looking at building things that use that research. So that's the quality we get here. The future, I think the future is wide open. I think there's a tremendous amount we can do, but problem is we can't do everything.
Right.
We need to concentrate on those things we feel that we can succeed at, do well. So I think rare earths is there. I think critical materials are there.
Yeah.
At one time, UW was a leading researcher in composite materials. I see a lot of work to bring that back. And people don't realize that most aircraft they fly on now, the wings are composite materials. They are not metal. They're a carbon fiber material. So the next time you get on an airplane, know that. That bothers some people. They want metal. And I think that we've done a lot of things in those areas and can continue to grow. The one thing, and I'm going to digress for a minute, I think is important with SCR is that it's not all engineering.
Yeah, right.
SCR has economists, legal people, communications people. In some ways, I've told people the engineering is easy. It's everything else that's hard.
Well, that's what an engineer would say.
Yeah.
About the social sciences, honestly.
But we need those.
Yeah. We do. Yeah.
And that, I mean, if you come up with a new device, a new product, you have to patent it. You have to make sure it's secure. You have to tell people about it. You have to make sure that it'll make money to pay off the research and be a viable product to produce. So you need all of those social sciences to work together. And I think SCR does a great job with that. And that's I think that's one of the things that sets SCR apart from similar organizations in other states.
It's our superpower, really. So thank you for saying that. So we're getting close to the end here of this podcast and also your time on the legislature. What are you looking forward to in your retirement? Your real retirement. You are actually already retired.
Yes, I retired from BP a number of years ago, and now I'm retiring from the legislature. Frankly, I don't have any great things lined up. I don't plan trips or anything else. There's a lot to enjoy in Wyoming.
Yeah.
I plan to do that. I have my own interests and hobbies that I plan to continue with and maybe go back to. Legislature doesn't allow you a lot of time for personal stuff. It's either, legislature or those things you have to get done, cutting the grass, painting the house, those sorts of things. So there's not a lot of time for fun.
Yeah.
And I can't say that my wife and I have many great plans other than to see what a real retirement is like. I probably still won't sleep in.
No.
I'm one of these people, I'm usually up by 5 in the morning.
I don't see you sleeping in. Yeah.
Continue to do that. And like I said, take advantage of all that Wyoming has to offer. That's why we live here.
What's your favorite place to visit?
I'm not telling you because people would show up there then. I've seen that happen. It is in this part of Wyoming. I think we have a great beauty here in the Red Desert near where I live that people don't appreciate.
Yeah.
I have my own favorite places to go visit, but it's all the state. I think we've been throughout Wyoming, my wife and I, over the years, and kind of every place is a favorite place. Well
said. I want to thank you on so many levels for all you've done for Wyoming, for SER, for me personally. I will tell you, I'm sure you remember this, that when we moved to Wyoming, I was trying to teach my son to fish, and you drove 90 minutes each way from Rawlins to Laramie to teach him to fish for an hour. And those kind of things, being welcoming like that, really make a difference. I was very scared of you the first time I had to testify in front of minerals. But I now know that there's a lot of kindness and generosity and caring in your heart. And I just want to say thank you so much from all of us around the state, SER. You've made such a big difference, and it's time for you to go enjoy your retirement. But I hope that you will still help me try to fish, because the last time we tried, we almost got struck by lightning. It didn't work out again.
Well, Holly, I intend to do a lot of that, fish and that sort of thing. When you count the number of times you fished in a summer, just due to all the other work that needs done, it's probably not the best way to do things. I'd like to say, gee, I don't know how many times I've gone fishing, rather than, hey, I got to go twice last year. And I don't mind, especially with kids, showing them, again, some of the things that Wyoming has to offer.
Yeah.
And I look at it that they might want to try fishing once. They may like it, they may not. But they've tried it. They've been given that opportunity, and it's kind of the opportunities Wyoming offers to everyone to try something, like maybe you like it, maybe you don't, and move on from there. And helping kids do that is great. Gives them something they can go on with life. They may find a real love for fishing or hiking or any number of things like that. I think that we owe that to all of our children.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and on so many levels. And thanks for doing the podcast, and we'll see you up in the snowies.
All right. And Holly, one last thing is, so people know, I don't plan to go away.
Yeah.
I will be around. I've told other legislators, if you have a question or something, glad to answer it. I don't plan to just disappear.
Yes. Up in the mountains, we'll ask you. How about that?
Yes. As I told someone one time, there was a critical issue going on when I was working, but I was taking vacation, and they said, well, if we need to get you, we can call you. I said, no, my cell phone won't work where I'm going. They said, well, how do we get a hold of you? You can't. And they said, well, we could send a helicopter if need be. I said, but I hide very well. Mm-hmm. So I'm not that important that people and companies can't get along without me. So, but yeah, retirement looks really good. Fishing looks really good. Hiking in the mountains. Fall is coming on, which is my favorite time of the year. And we'll just get on with things.
We'll see you up there.
Okay.
Thank you,
Holly.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape, the podcast that highlights the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming. You can expect a new episode of Energy Frontier every Wednesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next time.